Welcome to the Generation Fit podcast. I'm Coach Chris with Coach Benji. Together, with over 16 plus years experience, have helped hundreds of men build muscle and lose fat to have the body of their dreams. Today, we talked about the best foods for bulking and our best practices.
All right, what is good in the news? What is going on? What is viral? What is new in the world? What do you got?
What has broken the internet? There's definitely a few things. We could definitely start off with Trump and Elon getting over 1 billion views or downloads or on basically everything on their interview, which is unbelievable and also speaks volumes to the fact that people want to listen to conversations like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw, you know what? I'm going to be honest. I didn't listen to any of it yet. I don't even think I heard a soundbite, which is crazy because usually I've at least watched like a clip or two from it. I know that there was like something with the video and they put up the video after because there was like a problem with it. So it was like mainly an audio in the beginning, right? And that many people still listen to the audio.
There was like an audio hitch where it made his voice sound raspier and basically like he was thirsty the entire time. And then they made sure they had a separate third party video and audio going on him just in case something did happen.
Gotcha. Yeah, the only thing I saw was a video of a congressperson responding to a question from a news reporter, talking about how it's really dangerous that these conversations are happening on the internet. And I'm just thinking, I was like, how stupid can you be? It's like, if you disagree with them, you want these conversations to be able to happen so that one, it either makes your opinion stronger because you're able to formulate arguments against it, or two, so that truth can prevail and you might have been wrong. It's like you should absolutely want your biggest dissenters or the people you disagree with the most to be able to have a platform, because the minute they don't is the minute your platform could be taken away too. Like, it's so foolish. Like, just studying the history of free speech. Like, it doesn't matter what side you're on. It's like the side you're on won't exist anymore and be obliterated the minute free speech is obliterated.
Well, I think that's why he's fighting back so hard. Or Elon is now doubling down on everything that he's doing. But I also think it's because he realized that after, I believe something happened with his family member, one of his kids, that he's like, I don't want this to ever happen again to anybody else.
I saw that. Yeah.
And
is that the one with Peterson?
Possibly. And I just all these, I don't have that. I don't spend my time like going on these videos very often. If I do listen to these interviews and conversations, it's like usually in the background while I'm working. So it's not like I'm like head down listening to it and like, this is what I'm doing at the given moment. I just know that he's doubling down, obviously, because he's obviously open to conversation with everyone. Honestly, I'm pretty sure he reached out to Kamala too, or her team, and she obviously said no.
Well, yeah, she hasn't done anything, right? Like,
she has not done any interviews, and if they have, then it's all been pre-recorded. Basically, it's preset questions, preset statements, and then taking whatever Trump says and just saying it in her way, even though it's against what she has said in the past.
Yeah, I saw that. Well, that would be really interesting if she became president before the election, and then the goal would be, like, it would be a really smart strategy to be like, all right, Biden, you're out. We don't care about you anymore. Let's get Kamala in, have her institute like the best Trump policies, and then take credit for it. And then it's like, well, what are you voting for if you vote for Trump? You already got the person that did what you wanted. Like, for the independents, at least, like the people that could be swayed one way or another. It would be really smart. Like, I wouldn't put that past them to think of that strategy, because they play to win, those fuckers.
Oh, of course. Well, yeah. It does. This is where it definitely gets dirty. So I can't wait for. I'm all here for the memes. So I can't wait for all these things to come out and be like. And honestly, this is what's happening right now. So yeah, Kamala basically took Trump's tariff on tips, basically.
Or no tax on tips.
No tax on tips was the big.
Because imagine if we were tariffed on tips, like if we were, it would be like to be taxed on tips.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that's what we are right now. So yeah. So he's trying to take away tax on tips. Kamala took that.
Social Security too. I don't know if she like echoed that as well, but like that was another one he wanted to do, was no tax on Social Security.
Yeah. Social Security itself is ridiculous.
And
and then now she wants to impose a. The name is weird, but basically it's an unseen capital gains tax. Basically, it's the projected of what it would have been. So if your house went up 20% that you have to pay the tax on the 20% of the value currently.
So wait, so if you own an asset and don't sell it, you still have to pay capital gains?
There's a very specific thing. It's blowing up right now.
That would be hard.
I basically woke up to that.
Because she hasn't had any policies yet, and that's like one of her first big proposed ones. Wait, so it's something along the lines of capital gains tax on an owned asset that's not been sold.
Yes. It's basically the projection. It's like the value of the asset now versus when you bought it, and then the tax on it.
But not when you sell it. So what happens when you sell it? You get capital gains on every bit of value that it goes up, and then you get capital gains taxed again when you sell it.
I don't know. Basically,
I'll look into that, but like
it's definitely I'm definitely missing a piece of it. But enough of it where it's at least the taxation portion of it is when it's at its peak.
Man, at one point, are people just gonna be like, "Fuck you, we're not paying taxes anymore"? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's gonna get. I feel like it's just so extreme, the disagreement and the political divide and ostracism that we have, that I just could imagine someone like her getting in, and like very hardcore, like conservative people that live in the middle of nowhere being like, "I'm not fucking paying you taxes." Like, you're gonna send that to like some bullshit that like doesn't even benefit Americans. Like, I'm America first. Like, I'm not spending, like, you know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't be like an organized effort, because like that wouldn't be possible. But like, at what point do like giant spurs of people decide like, yeah, we distrust our government so much that we're not even going to pay them taxes anymore? Like, at what point does that like happen, and then happen to a point where like it could be effective?
I honestly think it will happen because right now I didn't think it was gonna be this bad, and then now the policies that she's giving out are what essentially is at base principle is redistributing wealth, and it's you're taking somebody else's.
It's basically full Marxism.
Yeah, you're redistributing somebody else's wealth into whether it be the government or the people.
Yeah, it's not going to work very well.
So you're essentially decentivizing people to make more, basically provide more value in the marketplace.
Yeah.
It's like, why should I make more if all my money is going to be taken? More of my money is being cut more to government spending or whatever it might be. And it's funny that we say this because, I mean, I hope Dogecoin does go blast up because Elon Musk tweeted a picture of him and it says in a acronym DOGE, and he goes,
when was that?
I think it was like 2 days ago. Basically, Trump wants Musk on his cabinet, one of his cabinets. And then the joke, the meme or the joke was that he wrote a picture of himself with a sword or something like that. And it's like Department of Government Expenditure. And then, so he wants to be the head of Department of.
So it'd be like a new cabinet they would make? Is that already a position or not?
I don't think so.
I couldn't imagine it is, yeah.
So I think it's obviously a joke, but I was like, it really needs to be something, because I think if a person were to be in charge of, I mean, realistically speaking, it's just the Department of Finance. It's really what it is. It's just finances. And it's funny because like I'm watching Game of Thrones and they're talking about the Master of Coin, which is the same thing. And the joke in that show is just like, oh, you're dealing with all the shit that like nobody wants to deal with. And like, and then also like, if we have no money, where is the money coming from? And this is literally the exact same thing that's happening now. And it's like, obviously this was set back in like BC or like, more in like the 800s or whatever. Yeah. And now we're talking about it here where it's like, all Elon is trying to say is, where the hell is our money going? Why are we being taxed so much? Where is it going? And how are we spending it? It's the three basic questions, and it doesn't matter which side you're on. It's like, I want to know where my taxes are going.
Yeah,
it's like, my roads are not fixed here.
Yeah.
Like, I can literally still hit a pothole about 5 inches away from my house.
Yeah, it's like driving through Baghdad, like on like the side streets in New Jersey.
It's like, okay, if my taxes, if 40% of my taxes in Jersey are going to teachers and government workers, it's like, cool, let me see it. It's like, okay, if you can justify it, sure. And 40% is already fucking high, so I don't even want to hear it.
Well, yeah, because the whole point is we have all these government workers that are doing what? It's like, okay, yeah, right? It's like, okay, you could say it's going to government workers, 40%. That would be high. It's like, well, one, where's the rest of the money going? And then two, if it is going to government workers, what are their jobs and like, what are they doing? Like, is it just a giant extension? Like, think about how many federal employees there are that are an extension of the executive branch, like the branch that the president's under, that when the country was first founded was a few cabinet positions and a few people under those members of the cabinet, and then has turned into like the CIA, FBI, the Department of Justice, the IRS, like all these things. I'm pretty sure all of them are extensions of the executive branch. So it's like all these people, these bureaucratic members of our government that we have no idea what they're doing and are essentially acting independent. It's like, well, how many of them are actually doing something like positive that our money should be going towards? And it's like, if so, how would we know that? Because it's not transparent. It's supposed to be, it's supposed to be public. It's supposed to be, a part of the executive branch, but we don't know like anything that's going on with it at all.
Oh, I think if Trump were to be elected, and then the smartest thing he could do is persuade Musk to be a part of his cabinet and to make everything more efficient in the government. That would be
like have him run it like a bit, like have Musk run the executive branch like a business in the terms of like, I give you the power to, I give you the, almost like the authority to go through, like look at all the branches, vet it, like tell me who you want to fire, who you want to keep, what we should get rid of, what we shouldn't, and then like Trump will just do it. Like that's kind of like the position.
I hope. Like my hope is that he does run it like a business, and he finds out what is the most efficient way. Basically, it's what's the most efficient way to run the entire process, if he can figure that out, or at least some branches or parts of the government. Then efficiency, lowest amount of cost with the lowest amount of risk, and then full transparency throughout the entire process. Basically, what he did with Twitter and X. Basically, he just took out and just fired a bunch of DEI hires. And people that were just seeing.
Wow, that'd be something.
And just took that would be like, oh yeah, I'm getting paid $120,000, and it's like they walk in at like 10 a.m. with like a $7 Starbucks Frappuccino and a croissant, and then they're like, oh, we have meetings, like we have meetings at like we have toys here, and then we go play board games at like 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I go in meetings again, and I'm like, okay, so and that's what Musk went in and was like. No. And then the next picture he took was like people who stayed. And it's just like literally, it just looks like a bunch of nerds. And it's like, well, it's mostly dudes. And it just so happened to be.
It's like they're probably doing something.
Well, that's why they don't care what other people think. They're like, I'm just going to get my job done and do it well. So all I'm saying is I think he would be literally the best candidate ever to do something like that. Like I know it was a joke with the Doge, but if he truly were to be that, I think he would be the best person to do so. Most qualified entrepreneur of all time to do something.
It's interesting because he might do more. Like what's weird is like he would be able to technically get more done. Like he would be an extension of Trump, obviously, like in his cabinet, but he would get, as someone who's not eligible to run for president, being a foreign-born citizen, someone who I'm pretty sure his citizenship in the United States, I would think, but
I assume so.
But foreign-born, so he's not eligible to run for president as it stands now. Having like one of the largest effects on the country since its founding, and not being president, not being able to be president, like that'd be so interesting.
I'm 100% endorsing this. If he's Department of Government,
it's our idea.
Government or Department of Government Expenses or Expenditure. I'm all in. I am so in for this. Are you kidding me? I would love to. Basically, if you, at a national level, if you were able to tell us where everything is going at all times, if to the public, which I mean, okay, to be fair, there is some danger to this, which means that as other countries can also see this at any time too.
You wouldn't want it to be like, for example, our money is going to go towards a bomb being dropped on the 36th and 32nd parallel of Iraq, like whatever, like X country. Like tomorrow, this guy's going to be like al-Baghdadi Egon is going to be sleeping on his bed, and we're going to drop a bomb on him. Like that wouldn't be good because then they'd know and he'd move.
It would just be like military spending.
Yeah,
This year we spent this much on military spending, and then obviously they would have their own forms of where the money went.
Yeah, it could be like, it would be better if instead of saying who we're assassinating, if it was just like assassination. It's like, all right, we're spending this much on assassination this year.
I'm just saying more on the front of like
I know,
yeah, like for example, like teacher pay. It's like I know we're unionized, but it's like, man, I'm sure if you were able to shift some resources into the Department of Education and to the state funding of state and local funding of better teachers, I guarantee you that takes you a lot further. Like I think the major things that we can think of, doesn't matter which side you're on. You really think about this. It's like, why aren't our roads fixed? Easily number one. Like you can easily pay contractors to build it, right? Demo teams all the way to contractors.
Yeah, Rome has roads from 2,000 years ago that are still working.
Yeah. And I know. And then to be fair though, like obviously we have more wear and tear now. More than ever. Cars are heavier and the tires that we use. Fine, whatever. All I'm saying is roads. transportation should be stellar. It should be absolutely stellar. You're talking about, and especially the roads, it's like, yeah, you definitely close it down and get it done fast. I know we pay probably per hour, which is what incentivizes right now the government to pay the contracting companies to be incentivized to work with governments, because it's just like we pay you for the project, but we pay you per hour, like per the employees per hour. Which, whereas if you were to flip that around and incentivize per project, that means that you would get more projects done for the same amount of pay, or not, if not more.
Yeah.
So that's roads. Teachers, it's like, well, we pay per district locally because obviously the taxes and the amount of taxes and how well the schools are in those areas. But it's like, well, what if we just financed more that way and have more incentive to pay the teachers more there that way, from meritocracy based versus union based? It'd be crazy to see if we get more people, especially around us, it'd be like Newark and Camden, to have better district school education systems overall. Obviously, safety is an issue there.
Well, long run, it would be a big benefit because, like, all right, so like Bjorn Lomborg in his book, like how to spend $75 billion and change like the whole world. Like he says, like if you just focus on like children's nourishment, and he probably talks about education as well. It's like instead of one Elon Musk, maybe you have four, and like that helps drastically change the world through like that entrepreneurship or that idea that spurred from this person. Maybe they do something that helps people make more money, have better quality of life, whatever it is. So if you have a significantly better education, and then 40 years down the road, it's like instead of one super genius, you have four now changing the world. It's like, well, that makes a huge difference then, because it's 4 times more large companies that are employing people and it's not like a big like pro giant corporation thing that I'm saying either. It's just that you have like large entities that are now able to provide more jobs. And then in terms of like, okay, so people are naturally going to ask now, you say, okay, let's put more resources into education, into transportation. It's like, where does that money come from? Crazy idea. We could be taxed less and spend less money on stuff that the government isn't transparent about. We could spend less money on foreign countries. We could not send money to Ukraine. We could not send money to Israel. And guess what? Be taxed less. And then also have the money that actually is being spent towards things that actually affect us positively, like transportation and like education, that could have a measurable ROI through time as well. Especially the education one, I would say, would have a more measurable ROI. It's like hard for it to be like totally concrete, but a lot more than like, yeah, we just sent it to like some dudes in Ukraine. Like hopefully they figured it out over there. It's like, okay, well, we know what's like probably really going on. So yeah, crazy idea. We could be taxed less, and the money that is actually being spent could be allocated towards things that actually help us, like the 2 things you just mentioned. So yeah, crazy thought.
I hope he does. I really like that is, to me, that is probably the most incredible thing you can probably ask for out of a certain one person to completely destroy the structure that we have built right now just to make it as efficient as possible. I'm not joking. That is the best thing I could think of right now, because right now I think there's too much government power in places where it doesn't need to be, and the spending is way too much, and at points where it's not transparent enough.
Yeah, it's not good for anyone. Oh, we'll do this thought experiment. It's like, how could it be good for anyone? There's, with that, objectively, like right now in this country, the way it's going, are people on the left or people on the right, or at either extreme of those two sides, are they very happy with how the country is going now versus it was 15 years ago? It's like, no. It's like, well, will there be any solution that's happy? It's like, that makes them happy? And it's like, okay, maybe not, but at the bare minimum, if they at least had more power within their own communities to make decisions instead of an overbearing federal government making decisions for them, well, it would work a lot better then, because then it gives power back to states, and then there's more significance for living in California versus living in Texas, for example. You know, you see all the comments on Instagram like, oh, look at this beautiful building in Texas. And then there's all the people probably from California are saying, oh, yeah, but you have to move to Texas, blah, blah, blah. But that's what's great about this country is like, yeah, if you don't want to move to Texas, then don't move to Texas, stay in California, see how that works out for you. And if you're from Texas and you don't want to move to California, like, great, stay in Texas and see how that works out for you. It's like, that's the whole point, right? But then when you have a very overbearing federal government, and then in the case we were talking about before, all these departments that are extensions of the executive branch that aren't even supposed to be there in the first place, it's like when you eliminate that, and now you have more power restored back to the states and funding going towards the right things from the federal government, well, then the things that really are like nuclear issues for people that freak people out, won't be as much issues anymore because now you're not debating it on a federal level. You're debating it with people in your community. So you could act locally, think locally, and there's going to be a lot less dissent within each community if you do things like that. Like, for example, if you're in Edison and went to a town hall meeting, there's probably not going to be people like yelling at each other about abortion, being like, oh, you motherfucker. Like, it's not going to happen. But at the federal level, it does. But when you reverse that role, it becomes a lot more community based. And I think things work better when it's community based than, hey, my community over here in New York is trying to rule how your community over here in Texas is going, and vice versa. That doesn't really work very well because it's very different people. It's almost like a different country.
Yeah, the perception across different countries, like my family being from Taiwan, they see like they think that we are in like absolute chaos, and it's like there's definitely some turmoil over here by all means, but it's not like we're fighting neighbor by neighbor. It's not like, excuse me, like we're slashing each other up or we're shooting each other up next door. Like, yeah, most of us probably disagree. Like just if you just think about it, if half the country is 50, basically 49, 40, 49, 51% split. That means every other door I knock on is most likely going to be a blue, a red, a blue, a red, going down the list, which means that you would think that we're all fighting each other, literally. And so it's not like that at all. Right now, the perception right now is that you see a massive divide between the people from all different parts of the country. But realistically speaking, you're right. The people we should not be governed at a higher federal level whatsoever, because then you have people who live in skyscrapers 2 feet from each other versus the people who don't see anybody for 3 square miles try to dictate what they can and can't do. Like, yes, government control, gun control on one end might be gun control, especially in the city areas. It's like, well, has it been working? No, but they want more. And then it's like, okay, well, we want less cops and all that stuff too. It's like crazy when there's more cops that are not corrupt. Place is safer. Yeah, would have thought. And then you go on to the, you do the same thing. It's like, okay, well, you're gonna bring somebody all the way across the country in the middle of nowhere, let's say Arkansas, on a field, and you told them the same gun control laws, and then somebody could easily go on their field and steal a lot of their crops, livestock, and it's like you're telling them they're not gonna have a gun. It's like, all right, come on. And they're gonna
the same law with a very different result, because a free republic can only stand with a virtuous people. I mean, it's like, like any system can be in theory perfect, but because humanity is not perfect, they're not infallible, no system can actually function perfectly, because that would require everyone within the system to be God and to be perfect. So it's like, okay, well, what do you want to do then? But yeah, I do think another thing is, like, think about the ratio of like congressperson, like a senator, for example, senator to population that is under them. It used to be, I think, the established ratio. I might be mixing it up with representative and senator, but for argument's sake, like, people will generally understand. You can look it up for yourself. But let's just say per representative, it was like 1 to 30,000 people. Now it's like 1 to, I guess, like a few million, right? If you do the math backwards, like you deduct from like 350 million or however many illegal immigrants we also have. And then you say, okay, there's, what is it? 335 representatives. Does that sound right? Something like that. So it's like one per million or something like that. So it's like multiplied times like 50.
Yeah.
That's a big problem, because then you have that one person making decisions for such a larger group of people. Every single year it gets larger and larger. But not only now are those people making decisions for their own like constituents, but now that the federal government's grown so much, it's like they're making decisions collectively for like the entire country more than ever before. Not that like that didn't happen before. That's the point of the federal government, right? It's like, hey, there's like specific duties that Congress is assigned that they're able to make laws on. Like, that's the whole point, right? It's like there's specific enumerated powers that Congress have, and it's like those powers they could operate within to be able to change the law of the land of the entire country. But then it's like 10th Amendment. Like, every right not listed in this document is reserved to the states and the people thereof. But now, like, you have this problem that it's like all these people in in all three branches of the federal government, Congress, Supreme Court, and the executive branch, are kind of dictating the law of the land for the entire country when there's no enumerated power to do that. And it's for the states. So I'm just saying, like, imagine if, Texas was able to make, if like, basically what's happening is Texas, California, both very different ideas, but they're debating at a federal level on things that are impacting their own states. Whereas, like, if they just debated themselves amongst their own state would probably go a lot better for how they see fit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes more sense. It makes more sense to me. That's how it should be. Which is interesting because being in New Jersey, it's still the same thing. It's like New Jersey's such an odd state because it's obviously the inner cities are massively blue, and then you still have it's like the random rich, well off places are also blue. It's like the
Yeah.
It's like they're just trying to have like the moral high ground. Was it virtue signaling? It's like the virtue signaling crowd.
But why do you think why do they virtue signal in that way, but then also vote in a way that's diametrically opposite of them, like, retaining wealth? Because they're still doing everything they can to build more wealth through their lifestyle.
I also partly think it's the education the system, because everything that we were taught around this entire area, in the entire area, all my friends were literally.
That's true.
Every one of my friends that were not in the middle of a farmland or in the shore areas, all bleed blue. All of them.
Gotcha.
Unless like one-off families, and I always say all, I'm obviously exaggerating a little bit, but the whole point is, if I were to point out at least 10 people, I would say 9 out of 10 would bleed blue, regardless of what you say about the policies. So
gotcha.
And that's just I just think it's because I grew up in a very liberal area. Still, it's still around the area, so I can definitely see it. But in terms of farmland and shore states, I think that's where like it naturally becomes red. But that's honestly anywhere farmland.
Yeah, definitely.
Or shore related.
Yeah, the whole world, right? It's the cities that are more liberal in the modern definition of the word, and the urban areas that are going to be more conservative. It's the way of life that they live. You know, it's as simple as that. They want to conserve their lifestyle. Like, if you're thinking about actually like the root of the word of conservative and liberal, the people who are living, rural lifestyles. I think I said urban before, but people who are living rural lifestyles, they want to conserve their way of living, their simple way of living. So they're not going to be liberal because they live very conservative lifestyles. And then the people who are in the cities, I mean, in the most root meaning of the word, is they're open to new experiences, different things. They're experiencing different cultures, like it's a giant melting pot, and they're very open to new ideas because of that. And they're doing the opposite of conserving their prior lifestyle by moving into the city and exposing themselves to new things. So it's totally opposite of what they're trying to actually preserve about their identity. Mm-hmm. Very different.
If you're enjoying this podcast and getting a lot of value from us, subscribe. All right, let's get back to the show. Our favorite bulking foods or best practices.
Okay, cool. So bulking foods. I think foods is a good one to start with, and then we could talk a little bit more about best practices. I know we delved into a little bit like how to do a bulk and orient yourself within one, but foods, there's so many, and I think it's going to be preferential to the person as well. But some that I'm going to name some that come off the top of my head. Like peanut butter is a huge one. Like things that are like very high in carbs, like breads, pastas, stuff like that. It's just very easy to eat a lot of it because it's just very calorie dense. You don't even need to eat that much of it for it to be that many calories. Chips, that's a huge one for me as well. I know a lot of people, this one isn't as big of a one for me, but like different types of nuts. I know you had a client, you said like chocolate covered almonds or something like that.
Yep.
So these are just some ones that come to mind, and I'm sure we're going to discuss more in a second, but it's really like highly palatable foods that are either very high in fat and carbs that allow you to easily continue to eat more of them, foods that you enjoy and that are just very calorie dense. And then other than that, I'd say just like on the protein side is like having fatter cuts of meat are just inherently going to be more calorie dense. And usually because they're the tastier ones, it's very easy to eat, a good amount of it. So like, that's why I'd say like just as a general run through of like what comes to my mind when people say like bulking food, it's that, and then probably just drinking calories.
Yeah. You want to be, so when bulking, especially for people who are really stuck on trying to put on weight, the goal is to eat the lowest amount of food, so volume, the literal amount of food going into your body, that also have the most amount of calories, so calorically dense. And the foods that you just mentioned are perfect. So any nut butters, nuts themselves, oils, avocados, right? Those are just generally the easiest foods to eat because they just contain so many calories. I know we eat that now, and they're all the ones we just named are pretty damn healthy. So I'll kind of break it down first, as in if you want. There's kind of like two major camps here. So besides the fact that you're probably skinny listening to this, or you're trying to really put on size in general, that some people just don't eat enough, right? They just are not hungry. So I would start off with this camp. And the people who are just not hungry, the whole point is to induce hunger. And this is where you don't have to eat as clean, right? But there are definitely some tactics you need to do with like the bulking foods and the bulking practices, right? And this is where I would say is you can definitely start having foods that are like that just make you really hungry. Like eating like one piece of chip will make you super hungry because nobody eats just one chip. Then if you were to eat stuff like straight up nut butter, it's like, man, nut butters on anything taste amazing. Like you name it. You eat like waffles, bread. You can easily go to town on that. And I know like when I go to an Italian restaurant, the big thing is to dip it in olive oil with toasted garlic.
Yeah, it's 1,000,000 calories right there as like before you get the appetizer.
Yeah. So there are definitely ways to do it. So that's why like we're definitely gonna go through right now. But just know if you're on one side of the camp and it's just like, all right, I'm not hungry, then some good practices are just taking like breads, carbs, and then loading it up with a paired fats. So your nut butters, oils, avocado oil, handfuls of nuts, and just mix the two together. And trust me, you can get it a lot with it done. So like the guy just mentioned before, the Italian bread with olive oil and toasted garlic. Oh my God, I can go to town on that.
Yeah.
Any bread with any sort of Italian sauce, easy. If you're on the the Asian side of things, that would literally just be like cooking fried rice.
Yeah.
Or fried rice and just jousting it in oil, like the craziest amount of oil you could ever think of.
That's right. Imagine being like, I was, you said the Asian side of things. Imagine if I was like, I'm not really sure like what side I'm on. Like, like sometimes I feel like I'm on like the white side, but sometimes I'm feeling Asian.
That's what Elias will be like.
Yeah, that's right. He's like, I'm on the Asian side of things today, guys.
Yeah.
That's right. All really good points. And I think that if anyone that's listening to this heard one of our more recent episodes talking about what to do when you go out to eat, for bulking, it's do the exact opposite, and you'll probably be using a lot of calories because at restaurants, like you talk about the Italian restaurants, lots of oil. You're dipping the bread in it. Very appetizer heavy, and then a meal that's cooked in a lot of oils that probably has breading on it. That's probably a mix. You're probably drinking calories. It's like these are actually all the things that are going to allow you to eat more calories. And then the only caveat with that is to make sure that you're still eating enough protein. It doesn't have to be through the leanest sources of protein, but make sure that you're eating enough protein along with that, because I think the easy mistake is for someone to say, okay, I get fuller when I eat a lot of whole protein sources, so therefore I'm going to eat all this other stuff over here, high carb, high fat sources, and then it's easy for them to kind of like drop off with the protein a little bit. So it's just like always still make sure like the protein is the focus point, or if it's not the focus point, make sure you're at least hitting the goal that you set out for yourself. Make sure that's established first, and then order everything around that, no matter how much that ends up being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have, I would say, working with people that are definitely on, there's multiple spectrums of this side. So I'll speak to the people who just don't have the stomach for it. So remember, the stomach is a muscle and it can be expanded. What I will say is every single meal that you do have, obviously you're going to lead with protein, preferably fatter, or you eat leaner source, just cook it in a lot of butter or oil. But that you want to start pushing that boundary a little bit more. I know it's a little bit uncomfortable. So basically you're going to get to the point where you have your set kind of meals that we kind of always talk about with protein sources, carbs, fiber, and maybe a little less fiber since you're bulking. And then what you want to do is you want to eat a little bit past that, usually with either more fat or more carbs. But the whole point is you want to get to your stomach to where you're full or you're satiated. And then you want to push that boundary just a little bit. And then over time, usually about a month's time, you're going to start to notice that you feel hungrier every single meal. And that's just because you actually have more physical space in your stomach to actually take in more food. So remember, it is a muscle, it's a tissue that literally can expand and come back down. So you just have to keep pushing it one by one. And usually just every single meal, you have to push it slightly more than you're comfortable with.
Yeah, it's like progressive overload in the gym. You know, it really is like progression in the gym with, okay, I deadlifted 315 this week for 5 reps. Next week, I'm going to go for 320 for 5 reps. Can I do that a little bit more? Okay, well, it's the same thing with the fork when it comes to I'm trying to bulk and I can't because I can't eat enough food. Well, it's like, can you do a little bit more at each meal, even if it's like 50 calories more? And then by the time it's a month later, like you said, like there's going to be a drastic difference. And then especially if you're using all the strategies that we're giving you and eating the right things, well, it's definitely going to happen. I think another thing is, and I don't want to touch too much on the strategy as much as it is the types of foods that you eat, but if you're, a lot of people, they fixate on what you just talked about. They eat the fullness and then they say, well, I'm definitely eating enough. But then they're not eating enough because we have them track their calories. And it's like, no, dude, you're eating like 500 calories less than you're supposed to. You just feel like you're eating enough. Mm-hmm. So then the key is to take them from feeling like they're eating enough to actually eating enough, regardless of how it feels. Because at the end of the day, like that is going to be a very different thing. I guess we're like the Ben Shapiro of like fitness now. It's like facts don't care about your feelings. It's like how full you feel doesn't care about your bulking. You know, it's like
you have to. It's kind of an ebb and flow here. So what I'll say is, once we have your calorie count and we have an accurate depiction of what's going on.
Yeah.
And then what we try to do is match that. So yes, let's just say after 2 weeks we track, you're instead of eating 2,500 calories, you're actually eating only 2,000. And already after every meal you feel satiated, then that means that as coaches, we're now going to, if you have 3 meals, that means we have to cover 500 calories. And that could be as simple as after every meal that you have a handful of nuts afterwards, right? Yeah. At every single meal, which is not much. Like the whole point is that this tactic is not that hard because a handful of nuts is not much at all. If you actually look at it, a handful of nuts is like 16, 17 almonds, let's just say. And then you can actually eat that in like one bite, realistically speaking. It's really not much physical volume of food, and it comes in at 170 calories or 200, just depending on what you get. So it's just like stuff like that. You do it every meal, that's plus 600 actually. So 3 meals plus 600, and next thing you know, you're actually up to par with how much you actually need to eat. So,
there's your surplus. Yeah,
so basically it's like, yes, we definitely need to know the numbers. We definitely need to see what's going on, but in terms of actually just expanding the stomach, the whole point is that you already know what satiated or full feels like. Now you have to push past that every single time while matching the numbers. So yes, at the beginning it's like the numbers don't match. All right, it doesn't matter. We have to match the numbers somehow. And if you're too full, usually we just be like, okay, we just need to add oil into all your foods or sauces or stuff that's easy to digest there.
Because usually it doesn't make you any more full. Like it just masks, like it's like masked almost. Like you eat, so if it's like depending on the oil, like obviously if it's strong olive oil, you could taste it. But I mean, it definitely. Basically, you feel exactly the same, but if you just had a tablespoon, it's actually 120 calories. Yes. Is that what that is? So
140.
It feels like exactly the same what you ate last night, but this night it's 120 calories more for 1 tablespoon. Do 2 tablespoons. That's fine. You know, it's like, and then sometimes it's just like generally if you're cooking with condiments, like you want to be, if you're on like the more health conscious side, you could be a little more careful about it or cautious, but I mean, using like barbecue sauces and stuff is something that I found to work really well on my bulk. So when I would eat chicken legs every night, chicken drumsticks every night, I would have barbecue sauce on top of that. It kind of functioned as the oil. Really, I could have been doing both, and maybe I was a little bit. I can't remember, but I think I was doing chicken drumsticks, oil, and then cooking it with the oil, and then after putting some barbecue sauce on, and that allowed me to get probably every night an extra 300 calories without feeling like I was having that 300 extra calories. So that was almost my surplus right there. And that was like the biggest trick that helped me. Like it helped me even more than the liquid calories. Like that's a big one. If I was drinking more calories, having a big monster shake in the morning. But even with that, I was still struggling a little bit. Like when I added oil into the food and a condiment on top of that, like that made the biggest difference for me.
Mm-hmm. If you guys don't understand fats, adding calories. So let's just say you already get your protein target naturally. You got that set. and you really just need pure calories.
Yeah.
You have no idea how powerful oils or fats are in your food. So if you are cooking your foods mainly, then you should really just start jousting your entire pan worth of oil. And if you don't know what a serving size looks like, your thumb is about a tablespoon on a pan. And then if you want to measure it out, then actually measure it out. So instead of just using 1 or 2 tablespoons, use like 4 to 6. And what that'll look like on a regular size, like 9, 10-inch pan, it's probably going to cover almost the entire thing by like a good millimeter layer. And that just adds in so many extra calories. Like, yes, you don't have to. The whole point is like, yeah, are you going to get all of it onto your food? It's like probably not. But the whole point is if you like, after you finish cooking it and then you just turn it and put it back onto your food, it's like you just added a total of 120 times however many tablespoons you just did.
Yep.
That is one of the easiest ways to add calories, and you don't feel a difference. Yes, the food's a little bit greasier, and all it is just actually the oil. So and it's not unhealthy if you're cooking it with healthier oils. So
exactly,
by all means, do that. And then same thing. If you're able to hit your protein target first, and you're like, okay, I need extra calories that you can't literally feel, but put butter, melted, like warm up a little bit of butter. If you want a more health conscious grass-fed butter, and get some bread, Italian bread from the store or whatever it might be, and melt it a little bit, and just put in 1 tablespoon slits, and you can see it on the actual thing.
So good, yeah.
Yeah, you just put it in, put a little salt on it, and then just lather it on that piece of bread. And you just added 120 calories on top of your already like 50 to 100 calorie piece of bread per slice. Per slice. So that's on at low 170 to at most 220 calories per slice of bread with butter.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. That's a great option. I feel like, you know what's funny is I think like we're just keep describing Italian restaurants because they're perfect for this. It's like all the tricks and tips and tricks, they work so well at Italian restaurants. It's like, because they have the butter option too. So it's like you could dip it in oil and then take the butter and do the same thing. It's like they have all our options there, probably just not as healthy as what we're...
I'm trying to think about the ethnicities. Like if you go Indian, it's like the non bread, but it's the whole point is that the sauce is covered in oil.
Yeah, so they have so much in there, right?
Yeah, and then like for Chinese, for the Americanized Chinese, it's like the crackers. They usually set like a thing of crackers and then sweet and sour sauce.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you go towards more of like any like general restaurants, you go to like a burger joint, they usually give you like if you go Five Guys, there's nuts there.
I was just gonna think of that. Yeah,
Five Guys is like nuts, and then if you go to any regular restaurant, they usually will just drop off bread anyways, or some sort of appetizer like that. Yeah. That's super easy. So the whole point is that you just gotta find things that you can just easily joust in. It just so happens that most of the time it's going to be bread, butter, and oil. Like
you just combine it together. Like, you know what I mean? Like how many guys like the one of the first guys I met when I was really skinny at the gym that was like friends with my dad. He said, I got a trick for you, man. I got a trick for you. I was like, what is that? He's like, every night before you go to bed. He's like, eat what you eat during the day. Every night before you go to bed, just lather a bunch of peanut butter on bread, put it together, peanut butter sandwich. He's like, or you can do peanut butter and jelly also. He's like, eat that every night before you go to bed. Guarantee you're going to get results. I didn't do that because I didn't really want to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but I mean, it definitely works because like it's fitting the criteria of exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Like in the last one we talked about, we always talk about putting nut butters on bread, and that's the easiest way to get like almost 400 calories per serving. And that's if you stick to the serving size. If you don't stick to the serving size, like 99% of us do or don't, then you're probably clearing 500 to 600 calories per sandwich. And then I think one of the questions that we get is like, yes, in terms of eating unhealthier foods, like, yes, that's the easiest way to just generally get more calories in. But if you're like, okay, I want to stay on the cleaner side, then this is the ones that we just mentioned are definitely the best practices. So it's like, yes, getting nut butters that are easy on the stomach for you. Most of the time, like almonds are usually better for most people because now I know peanut allergies are up on the rise. Oils, so definitely get like extra virgin olive oils. Get avocado oil. If you're into coconut oil, by all means. And then if you're in terms of like your carb sources, it's like, look, you can easily get like the white rice. Like white rice is one of the easiest foods to digest. If you get any sort of bread, then it's just hopefully that the ingredients are just literally like water, flour, salt, yeast.
Yeah.
Again, not too much further away from that. And then obviously if you have the wheats themselves, like barley, rye, whatever.
Yeah.
But from there, like those are generally like you're going to be your best bulking strategies for at least staying healthy with a good digestive system.
Yeah. And then like on the unhealthy side, like I'm not going to tell you, hey, just eat all unhealthy, but it means you have more lenience on your lifestyle. Like it's fun to bulk because let's say it's fall and you're going to the farm pumpkin picking and there's like apple cider, apple cinnamon donuts, you know, all these really cool things. Well, guess what? It's like if you're used to being in the mind frame of, oh, I can't eat that because that's, you know, not healthy or not aligned with my goals. Well, if you're bulking, it's like it's not aligned with your goals. That's for sure. It's like if you're focused on protein throughout the day and then you're within your lifestyle, there's a lot of things that you want to indulge in. Well, you can indulge in them because the whole point is that chances are you're not going pumpkin picking every day. It's not someone's wedding every day. It's not this every day. So it's the ultimate reason to eat those things and not feel guilty about it. Because you shouldn't anyways if you're cutting, if you do the right things and follow the right strategies. But especially if you're bulking, like you should just have a lot more lenience. Like the 80-20 rule can become a little more dramatized as well on that bulk. Whereas on the cut, you know, the more the tighter you make that 80-20, whether it turns into like a 90-10 or whatever, the more satiating, the more full you will be. So it works the opposite, obviously, on a bulk. So it really comes down to like how much you value your health, and then what your comfort levels are, and how your body reacts to some of the foods as well. Like, you know, I have very sensitive skin. And when I was having Reese's on my bulk, it wasn't like the greatest strategy because I was like breaking out a lot more than I ever have. Maybe someone else, they're like, hey, I love Reese's and it doesn't make me break out. Well, you could probably have a little bit more Reese's than I had. I probably shouldn't have any because it just makes me look horrible. So I think there's like a certain comfort level, your goals, how your body responds to it. Like I think like when it comes to, hey, should I eat unhealthy to achieve the desired weight gain? It's like those are the caveats and things you have to consider when actually doing that. And then from there, it's like you decide like how much you really want to dramatize that 80-20 rule, I'd say. Like it really comes like at that point, it's individual.
Yeah. And it also would say is your digestive health. So
yeah,
some issues I do see is, yes, you do have way more leniency by all means here. And for the people that we do work with, some do come back and say it's hard. Since they are eating more food, which is already hard for them, and then they're unable to digest it, or it's like I have stomach aches, or I run to the bathroom a lot, then that's where it becomes like now we have to find cleaner foods.
Exactly.
Like basically cleaner foods that they can digest well and they have to eat a lot of. And that's obviously harder. So that's why when we speak to this, it's like we don't want you going to quote unquote dreamers or dirty bulk.
Yeah.
It's the fact that we just need to find foods that you can eat well, digest well, and eat in mass quantities of. And that just typically becomes like what you hear of, which is like the white rice.
Yeah, white rice is the best example.
White rice, like very pure bread, pastas, like those things are usually like, hey, like you ask anybody, it's like, yo, I could usually eat a lot of that.
And they taste awesome.
Yeah, and they taste amazing. So if you're okay, basically it's on one end, it's like you should have a good base of just generally good foods. And then by all means, the rest can be your favorite foods of literally whatever, whether it be your donuts, cookies, chocolate chip, ice cream, whatever it might be. Like you can have whatever you want there. But then if you're the person that's just like, I have digestive issues, or like if I eat a lot of that stuff, my stomach starts to whirl, or yes, you break out in acne. I get hives when that happens, or I get eczema breakouts. So if you're in that camp, then I would say is to definitely be on the cleaner side and then just ramp up the foods like we just talked about.
Yeah.
So you're able to get more of those calories in, because it is tough. It's just so funny because I've always been the fat guy, or I still eat like a fat kid. So my bulks were never. It was never really hard. So all right, I will speak very, very tiny on this side of the spectrum. Living in the city and having an active job, I was already at 25,000 step average.
It's a lot.
And then about 15,000 of those steps was just commuting back and forth from my apartment to the gym with a 20-pound weighted backpack that carried literally all of my tools for whatever it might be. Like for the gym, for my notes, for my clients, iPad, gym equipment, you name it. Because I just don't want to leave it at the gym. I just don't trust people at the gym anyways. Doesn't matter where it is. And I had to eat to put on more weight from 180 pounds plus, I was eating 4,100 calories to be at a 200 to 250 calorie surplus per day.
Yeah.
So that's where you're like, okay, Chris, that sounds like a lot of fun. And it's like, yes, it is.
Until it's not.
But when you mess up one day of digestion, you throw off the entire day. So I'm trying to tell you and understand is that the people that can't eat a lot of food is just, and then they think they eat a lot of food and they eat a lot of processed food and they're like, okay, I can't eat anymore. It's just because their digestion is broken down.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, yes, at 4,100 calories, it's like, how much can it actually be dirty? And it's like, not much at all, because 4,000 calories per perspective, at 4 meals a day is what I normally eat. So you have 1,000 calories per meal on average. And if I were to eat a protein and carb, fats, maybe a little bit fiber here, that's for perspective. 3 cups of rice, any sort of meat, 2 servings of that, cooked in about 2 tablespoons of oil. So that on a plate about this big for the camera, about like a 8-inch plate diameter, that entire plate is filled with food. Every single meal. And that's and that's for cleanliness.
Yeah.
So if you didn't do it clean, if you missed out one meal and you had like massive diarrhea, or you just were constipated because you had 4 of those Toll House cookies.
Yeah, it wrecks you.
And then you can't eat. So yes, on the very, very extreme on the other side is just that you just can't digest. You literally can't digest. You're not letting it out, or it's coming out all over the place and you just don't want to eat anymore. So that is the one very extreme end on the other side.
Yeah, your body has to respond well to what you're eating. Like whether it's there's some very healthy options that your body might not respond well to specifically. So it's like you have to find the things, regardless of how clean or how not. Usually the cleaner things are obviously going to digest better, but you have to find the things that digest well. Otherwise, your bulking efforts are just going to be thrown down the drain.
Yeah, just add. I'm telling you right now, anytime you cook with anything, add oil to it. You want to do.
Absolutely.
You want to. For the Asians out here, when you make fried rice, joust it in oil. You like sesame oil? Throw that in there. It's a great tasting toast to it. If you're more on the Italian side, guess what? You're still throwing oil throw oil in the boiling water, and while it's cooking, and then when you take it out, you're going to put more oil in the pan and then sear it in the pan. I'm not even joking. Oil is your best friend here after you hit your protein target.
All right. What food are you going to say for the black people?
What? No,
so when you guys are...
Well, it's funny. It's just funny. So it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's just funny because it's the stereotype, obviously. But the fried chicken. We're not inherently saying fried chicken's bad either. It's
Yeah.
we actually have found breaded chicken that is actually really healthy and tastes really freaking good. It's Bell & Evans. I will promote it all the time. So if I'm sponsored by Bell & Evans one day, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
Bell & Evans, the breaded chicken breast, patties, chicken nuggets, tenders, all fire. So
is that one of the ones I tried?
Yeah, the Butcher Box one too.
Oh, gotcha.
But either way, they're all really good. So
yeah, they're good options. Well, that's the thing, right? It's like you're adding more breading on top of something that's already protein dense. And it works out really well, as opposed to a lot of breading on top of fake chicken that's not even real.
Yes.
It's a very big difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So it definitely will help. So adding oils or adding breading into something that you create, or finding healthier variations, or it can be the easiest way to adding calories without adding so much volume. And then if you want practical tips on just eating small things that add in a lot of calories, then it would just be having nuts, literally just having handfuls of nuts after every single meal on hand, having a packet of it or in a Ziploc bag and just popping it in. And then another easy way is just throwing oil. If you make soups or anything like that, just throw in 4 to 6 tablespoons of oil.
You won't even taste it.
You can't even taste it.
Yeah.
You can barely even see a difference. You can't even tell a difference. That's kind of the whole point. That's when you go to any restaurant, they give you for example, French onion soup or matzo ball soup. You can't tell. I can tell because there's actually a little film of oil floating around because it's fattier. But the average person can't tell, and you definitely can't feel it. You won't tell until it's too late. You'll drink it,
until it's too late,
and then you finish the rest of your meal. You're oh my god, I'm so full, and it's well, yeah, no kidding. You just
afterwards, you got a lot of volume though. This is good. Yeah,
you got a lot of volume with a lot of calories.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. If you got value and want to continue getting value, you can follow us on our Instagram handles. Mine is Coach_Chris Lee.